Danny. I think that it's really wonderful that there are specific routes available, but clearly there are limitations to how viable those routes may be to different people. Mira, specific question for you, and this refers to, without naming, some incidents that have occurred recently. What happens if someone lodges a complaint with the organization or with the relevant authorities and nothing happens or they get brushed off? What is your advice to people in that situation?
I think you've got to be very strategic with your plan of action. And say, for example, if you're in the university, I would, if it happened to me, I would seek support from the student union and together garner a campaign and together decide what would be the best course of action. If you want to petition online, go, or to get have a campaign on sexual harassment, to lobby for sexual harassment policies, better redress mechanisms, perhaps. So I think you need support from your fellow students. That will be important if you're in university. And or go and see the dean. If you have the courage, just go and see the dean. The other one would be if you are in a law firm, okay, you lodge a complaint to the HR, okay, it doesn't work. You lodge a complaint to your bosses, well, the bosses are your perpetrators, it doesn't work. So lodge a complaint to the bar council, it doesn't work. What do? Nothing works. Come and see us. Yeah, you go and get assistance from, some legal assistance from AWL, Association of Women Lawyers. And also you can reach out to Women's Aid Organization, NGOs, and AWAM, organizations like that, that provide emotional support. So they will help you to lay out the options that are available, and then for you to decide which is the best option for you. Not the organization decides, but you will decide for yourself. So I think getting a network of support is important. Of course, as Danny said, file a police report if authorities are not going to listen to you. But as usual, the burden is beyond reasonable doubt. I mean, you need evidence. It's a very strong burden. Civil litigation. So what about social media? That too, we had already discussed. You have to really balance it out, you know, what are the risks involved or whether it's worth a try. So and for that, I think I would advise you to get some form of legal advice or some form of help before you go onto social media.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you, Danny. Senior, let me put you on the spot here for a moment. If someone comes to you and says, I have been sexually harassed, do you believe them?
Well, it depends on my capacity, right? If you come to see me as a lawyer, then yeah, I would. Because I think, you know, it's quite a serious thing to see a lawyer. Because you're obviously considering your options. If you pay me, I'll believe you even more. Mira's frowning, sorry.
I'm frowning too. If it's someone you know, it's a friend.
Yeah, I would.
No.
I would. If it's a friend, I would. If it's somebody that I don't know, for example, I see it on social media, you know, somebody coming out, I would lean towards believing, but I would always try to keep an open mind because, you know, we have to be, rather we are trained, and I think it's in a way a second nature for us to be a bit more objective about things. And I think that's a nature of those who are in the legal profession. We try not to get our own emotions or private thoughts, you know, get the better of us. So yeah, it really depends on the capacity, how I'm dealing with it.
Okay, thank you for being honest. All right, I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat here. And they're not actually questions, but I think there's some rather useful comments. One of which is, if HR doesn't take any action, then you can escalate the matter to the Labour Office, and you don't have to go to court. You don't necessarily need legal advice, because Labour Office staff can actually help you directly. So that's a really useful piece of advice. Another one is that you should keep written records. I think we've already talked about that. And there was this really bizarre statement somewhere earlier, which I'm not going to repeat. But does sexual harassment depend on gender? No. I think we started this conversation with saying gender doesn't matter. So whether you're talking about two people of the same gender or people of different genders, it really doesn't matter. Are you feeling unwanted sexual harassment? If you are, gender doesn't matter. Mira, you have something to say about this?
Yeah, well, it's a question posed to me. The last thing a student would want to do is rally support from the masses, because that might amount to defamation. What I meant was rally support from your students, from your colleagues, to raise awareness about sexual harassment, to lobby for sexual harassment policies within the university, and to get the leaders of the university to take a strong stand against sexual harassment. I wanted to speak a lot about it, but due to time, I couldn't. But it is not about naming the person. No, I didn't say that. So nothing to do with defamation there, yeah?
Thank you, Mira. We're actually out of time, but for the sake of completeness, we're going to extend it ever so slightly. And I'm just going to move on to the next slide. I try not to share any of my emails with you. So the other 4 questions that were asked were, how does one support sexual harassment victims? How do we handle victim blaming? What happens if the perpetrator threatens you with defamation or threatens you generally? And the last question, and this is something I don't think we'll have time to discuss today, what happens when we're talking about sexual harassment outside the workplace? So in public transport, in restaurants, and all of this stuff, right? So I'd like for a moment to go back to Survivor A. Survivor A, the question is very specific. I think you've already shared with us what a survivor needs to do to prep and get ready. I'm really interested to find out, if you're trying to support a survivor, what are the right things to say and do? And more important, what are the wrong things? What are the absolute no-nos? You know, how people responded to you or reacted to you and things they said. Could you share some of that with us, please?
Yeah, you know, after I filed my case, a lot of people in the organization came to know about it, because honestly, there's no such thing as total privacy or confidentiality. And one female director actually told me, oh, I too had been harassed, but I survived. And another favorite thing was that, why didn't you just say no? Or why didn't you just walk away? I did say no, you know, but you know, those statements, those things that were said to me, to my face, that broke me. I questioned myself, you know, what the hell, what was I doing? So that's really, so please don't say such things. So just don't do that. What you could do is please be there for the long run, because it is emotionally draining. It was emotionally draining for me, because again, I had to recall things that I don't want to recall. And instead of just telling her, you have to do this, you have to do this, why don't you take this one? This is the law, this is the policy. Please go through it with her, because I don't want to do this. It's very difficult. But if you help me to do it, I will do it. And so please be there in the long run. And the third one, which I found very important for me, therapy. So please offer her, advise her to go. I did say no, because, you know, I'm a strong woman. I can handle this. I can go through it. But, you know, my body broke down, and for no reason apart from, like I said earlier, I lost my hair. My body was swelling things, and I got shingles, I got chicken pox. So she needs to work through it. Therapy helps. So please advise her to go for therapy. As a friend, it's different, because therapists give you different kind of tools. So please advise her that. Thank you.
Thank you, Survivor A. Very quickly, I want to move to the point on victim well, not on victim blaming specifically, but let me ask you this, Danny. You have, and I know this personally, over the years, I've known how you've handled people who have gone through this and worse. How do you clarify that it is true? So this is the same question I asked you, but in a nicer way. How do you clarify that it is true, that, you know, without coming across as being judgmental or disbelieving? There's a very fine line. Tell us how you do it.
Thanks, Auntie. So when people approach AWL or P1, or when they approach me personally on what has happened to them, I usually just start by asking questions about background of the incident, right? Just what happened and how, you know, what do you want out of this? And from there, then you can understand the situation better. And sometimes when I speak to survivors, they may already have some sort of evidence with them. Like, you know, some of them keep screenshots of messages and emails and pictures and all that. And so these are very helpful. But even if they don't have this, right, and that happens when like the harassment is, let's say, verbal or gestural in nature, right, it doesn't mean that I won't believe the survivor. And for me, I don't assume that you are lying. And the thing is, in being a survivor myself, I understand that so many people don't speak up because they fear that they will not be believed. And most, if not all, survivors, before they even talk to you, believe me, they would have already done their own self-blaming and self-judging, right? The first thing that you would do to yourself is to actually ask, am I taking this too seriously? Was that really warranted? Is my anger valid? What was I wearing? Did I invite that sort of behavior? And we would have already done that before you even speak to a person, let alone a stranger, right? So usually you would speak to someone that you trust, right? So when people come to us, to AWL and all that, it's usually someone who we don't know. And it's not easy to do that, right? And we need to understand that when someone tells you their story, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So that's one. Two, I think it's also important to not be judgmental. So when you ask your questions or when you talk to the survivor, you know, don't ask questions like, are you sure it happened? Or ask them, were you drinking? Was it at a party or something like that? These are very insensitive questions. And these questions aren't helpful, right? And what you want to do is that you want to try to understand the situation and help the survivor go through it. So that's two. Three, and I think that this is something that, I mean, related to the question sort of, but I just wanted to highlight this, right? There's something that we, you know, some of us don't do enough of. Like when someone posts their story, when someone tells you something, the first thing you'll ask is like, what happened? You know, tell me more about it. Oh my God, it's so horrible. I can't believe it. Or like, are you sure this person is so good? This person is a very well-respected person or something like that, right? The perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator. But the other question that we should also ask the survivor is, how are you doing? How are you coping with it? And check in on them from time to time. And we need to understand it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be frustrated. And honestly, I've met so many people who you know, whose mental health was affected so badly that they couldn't go to work, they couldn't continue, you know, doing whatever it is that they were doing. And this is why, you know, I would suggest, and I think Mira has also mentioned this as well, that there are organizations that offer help, you know, in terms of social workers who can help you with emotional support. One of them, well, some of them include Women's Aid Organization, WAO, AWAM, or Women's Action Society, WCC Women's Center for Change. And I think we have a slide there in here that will give you the details of these organizations and that you can talk to them. So You know, these are the things that I would think about when I speak to survivors.
Thank you, Danny. And yes, there is a slide at the end where we share contact details for you. I'm really desperate to wrap this up because I'm very conscious of people's time, but we don't get the shot every day. Survivor A, were you blamed for what happened, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I did. The easiest way by them, there was anonymous email going around that I was actually having an affair with a perpetrator. So how I dealt with it, again, therapy. My therapist really helped me, and she gave me tools on how to focus, and then I concentrated on making sure that my case is solid. And I had to believe that, you know, I was speaking the truth. So therapy, yeah.
Thank you. Mira, so when someone is victim blamed, you know, the point that survivor A made, yeah, you're having an affair, it's not sexual harassment, or your skirt was too short, or, you know, you're a flirt, what is your advice? What do victims do in such a situation? What would you say to the victim?
First and foremost, as what Survivor A has said, you have to constantly remind yourself that it's not your fault and that you are the victim. It's very important. And that even as friends who may come across other survivors, please tell them that. That's the first thing you do. Don't ask about, as Danny said, where did it happen? How did it happen? No, that's the last thing. I don't ask about the incident. First, you must tell the survivor it is not your fault. Because quite often, as Survivor A said, you will dissect the whole incident and you'll replay it in your mind. Did I do it this way? Or could I have done it better? And then to a point where you convince yourself that it's your fault. You know? So I think the first thing you have to do is remind yourself this is not your fault and stop blaming yourself. You're taking away the focus. It's the perpetrator's fault. And quite often, you know, when I've asked friends about sexual harassment, and I mean, especially some of the latest cases in the legal fraternity, where they say, hey, he's a partner. You know, he could not have done it. He's a good person. And I say, hang on a minute. Isn't she a good person too? So why do you take the side of the perpetrator? Why do you instantly believe the perpetrator? She could be telling the truth too. So there is a disbelief that a good person could have done it, or sort of a good person, we think. So she must have done something wrong for him to agitate him, you know? So my advice is cut off toxic persons in your life who do not support you. And
Okay.
of course, as Survivor A has said, as Danny has said, seek professional help to help you along the way, as Survivor A has said too. That had really helped her.
I think it's really crucial that people understand that we now live in a society that is less stigmatized about talking about mental health. And I come from a generation where mental health meant you go to Tanjung Rambutan, move in, take your toothbrush, you know, like that, and go and live there. Mental health is not about that. Mental health is about coping with the things that happen in your life. And sometimes we can't cope alone. And it's always useful to be able to talk to professionals who may be able to provide guidance. It's not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign that you're completely nuts or that you're having no labels. You need help. You need someone professional to help you. It's like going to see a doctor or going to see a dentist when you have a toothache. It's just that. I'd like to direct the last question to my so-called diversity candidate, not Sinu. So the victim bravely goes on social media, puts it all out there with or without the details, and the perpetrator threatens to sue, threatens them that they would lose their job, hires a lawyer who sends them letters. What does the victim do? Or what does the person who posted it on social media do? What can they do?
Find a lawyer. Well,
Continue.
you see, even though victims and survivors might feel the threat of defamation suits, but you must also bear in mind what would the perpetrator, or what would the other side be thinking? If they choose to go down that path, it's not a bed of roses for them either, because you are basically opening up your entire conduct and that of your organization to scrutiny. So even though we see a lot of allegations of sexual harassment, but how often do we see defamation claims being filed in response? There's a good reason for that. There's no smoke without fire. And if they do decide to go down that path, I would think that you must first seek legal advice, because you need somebody who's objective, and you need somebody who is, in a way, able to address what you could be too emotional to otherwise think. So objectivity is very important, and you need a lawyer to do that, besides appearing in court, of course. But I would think that a lawyer would want to go for discovery against the other side. Your lawyer would want to go for discovery. Your lawyer would want to open up the conducts and the books of that particular organization, and that would not be something that they would just swallow just like that. So don't think that being thrown a defamation claim it means the end for you. It's far from that. And there was always this backlash that particular organization or that particular perpetrator may face as a result of the defamation claim. Besides seeking legal advice, I think the rest has been covered quite well by Survivor A and the rest. Get your evidence in order, circumstantial or direct. Write down everything. I think that's important, because you would have to tell your story many times to many different people. Write it down early, so that your recollection of what had happened is not tainted by subsequent events. And get a good support system, because this will be a journey. And like what Mira said, get rid of toxic people from your life, because a lot of what has happened, it did not happen in isolation. Chances are it happened because it has been enabled by a lot of those within the organization, or those who you thought were your friends. So don't forget the enablers. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Find Mira and Danny on top of that.
Yeah, thank you, Sinu. Before we wrap up, just one more slide. And this slide is actually the contact information for different organizations that you can reach out to. So these include the Women's Aid Organization. There is a 24-hour hotline that you can contact, or you can SMS or WhatsApp the TINA network. On Awam, there is a phone number and an email address. WCC in Penang, there's a phone number, and you can also WhatsApp them, and they also have a Seberang Perai branch where you can contact them there. In Sabah, we have the Sabah Women's Action Resource Group, or SAWO. And the Chris Network, for Chris, you can actually email them, contact them directly on Twitter or Facebook. And of course, there's us, the Association of Women Lawyers. So as we wrap up, I'd like to thank everyone for your comments and your feedback, and that you've actually stayed with us right up to this point. We hope that this event has been useful and that you will be empowered if you are a victim or you know someone who is a victim to take the right and necessary steps. We haven't said yes or no to social media. We said if you're going to use social media to publicize this, that there are a lot of prior factors that need to be considered in order to safeguard yourself as you do this process. I would like to thank the panelists, Sinu, Survivor A, Mira, Danny, for taking the time to be with us, and ATC for creating a platform where we could talk about this openly. Okay, thank you to everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Sorry, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.